OriginClear is transforming the water industry with revolutionary water treatment technology and innovative financing. With me is Executive Vice President Kim Berenger to explain the company. And recently, the water industry achieved a status of unicorn. There have been some companies in this industry who have been unicorns, which is a private company worth $1 billion. So tell me about that, and what does that mean?
In actuality, that unicorn was created through private venture capital. I think the street's waking up to the fact that this is a massive underserved business, and technology can change day to day, but water is enduring. It's not going to go out of style, I suspect, anytime soon. That unicorn was incubated by venture capital. There was no individual investor access. So if you and I said, look, I love this idea, I want to be involved, we're boxed out. OriginClear, what we're doing is the exact opposite. We recognize that in a $1 trillion space, you're probably going to have more than one unicorn. This is a unicorn creating space. We want to develop the next one, hopefully, but focus exclusively on individual investors to provide kind of what I would call mainstream investors or accredited investors with the same access to the same opportunity and structured in a way that creates generational wealth.
Now, and I did read that the world's first trillionaire will be from the water industry.
And I believe that the quote came from Forbes Council. So you have to ask yourself, okay, a trillionaire can be created. That's going to be an early player for sure. I don't think you can be a late stage investor in something and create $1 trillion of wealth. But let's focus on the fact that it's going to have the ability to create $1 trillion plus of wealth, create maybe 1 million millionaires. Here's what's interesting about the company that just created a unicorn. It's exclusively in private water infrastructure. Okay. This is entirely what we do. You know, if you're Anheuser-Busch, if you're Pepsi, if you're Big Pharma, you don't need decentralized water pay per gallon. What you can do is basically construct a $100 million system, hire engineers round the clock, and you're not really a polluter anyway. Big businesses aren't. It's the small businesses that don't have access to that.
And you've said before, water is the people's asset. So it's obviously something we need to survive.
MLPs were an instrument that was created 40 years ago, and it kind of catered to creating generational wealth for the affluent, accredited investors. It's been magnificent at doing that. It's got tax benefits. It's got income that protects against inflation. That came along when big oil was already a century old. Water, the people's asset. If you're going directly to venture capital firms, if you're going directly to hedge funds, it's not going to be the people's asset. It's going to be VC's asset. It's going to be hedge fund asset. We're focusing entirely on creating decentralized water systems. Each one will operate like an oil well for water. And by focusing on individual investors, we believe we can deliver that wealth creation opportunity, decentralize it among millions of individuals, decentralized and democratic.
Yeah, well, and it definitely is an industry that seems like it's in need of disruption.
Water is a highly technical business. Manufacturers can't operate where there is no infrastructure. By doing what we do, we can create a decentralized private water infrastructure system faster than they can even put up the building. You're going to see thousands of manufacturers come back from China, land in the United States. We can help facilitate an American manufacturing renaissance. And that's really exciting because not only because of the capital it creates, the jobs it creates, and of course the wealth.
Because these companies need water, and they may have to wait for years for some municipality to install a...
Think about it, right? Think about it. So we're going to build a manufacturing plant as soon as they build 100 miles of pipe. It's not going to happen. We could literally build them as fast as the building.
The last question, Ken, just about your customers.
When a 30-year veteran engineer says, holy cow, guys, you've blown me away. You just handed me the easy button.
Honestly, I was amazed. I was really looking for the easy button so that we can focus on doing what we do best.
We've got a number of installations. North Texas, in my own area in Moscow, PA, they're putting in systems that are just changing the way people can develop property. When people have gotten used to having a certain way of operating and they think that's their only option, and you get the brilliance of a Dan Early coming along with a decentralized system saying, here you go, you're in business. And when they're impressed with that, you know you've captured the right tone.
Here we are with Water the Blue Gold, Thursday, April 4th, and it's briefing number 256, Save the Planet, Recycle Water. And we have a very large audience today. Thank you all. James Wright, happy evening to you all. Some crashing waves, maybe inside the tornado, i.e. whirlpool over the sink draining. Well, hope you're okay, James. and we will continue. Of course, the usual safe harbor, the statement disclaimer, and now the Test the Waters crowdfunding notification. There'll be much more about this that I'll be telling you about. All right. Let's take a look at the news from my account on X. Now, I just want to emphasize what I do here is only a skim of what is on this. We post a lot on this account. It's kind of a flagship account for everything we do. It's, many times it's what comes out of podcasts that I've done that gets recycled as everything. So do follow Rigs Ec. I strongly recommend that. So let me go ahead and shift over to that. And I'm going to start with a video that is really kind of cool. I'm blown away by the quality of the videos being created by the team. So let's take a look at this. And here we go with the Twitter feed. Intention is everything, right? Imagination creates reality is a very good saying. So here we are. We imagine something and we make it real. There's no situation that you can't work your way out of. None. Doesn't exist. That's just how it is. That's what I've learned. Because in the 80s, that business that I built in the 80s, computerizing companies, I shut it down voluntarily because I didn't think the money was in it. And the guy I gave the business to, he became a millionaire. How? Because he found that the ongoing annuity from being an IT shop for companies is a multi-decade life cycle, right? You don't make money when you first computerize a company. It's terrible. It's horrible. But then you have the gravy of the monthly fees, right? And I didn't factor that in. So when you become discouraged, you got to find out where the exit is. What's the better idea, right? It always is there. The better idea is always there. Indeed, that is very, very true. So that came out of a podcast that I did. And again, you see these posts here, these threads, really interesting. I will not be wasting briefing time on this, but if you're on X and you subscribe to RigsEc, you'll see these posts as they come. All right, cyber attack. Quote unquote, we're screwed. U.S. water and wastewater systems are at risk with various forms of governance and authority behind state, local, federal, and commercial entities responsible for management facilities, where some have largely ignored security practices. Here's the issue. It is such a patchwork of governance between all the different players that is inherently a security risk. So what do? Do you try and turn it into some monster central management, or do you go the other way? Do you completely decentralize so that if a local brewery is attacked, so what? The brewery shuts down, but it doesn't shut down an entire city. Remember that 90% of all water treated in America is being treated by 10% of the water treatment systems. It's the big ones that matter, and they're the ones that are potentially very dangerous. Okay, let's keep on going here. Okay, nuclear-free Germany. I think that Germany is really in a bad place because they had nuclear power, which is inherently climate friendly, right? But because of the agenda of the Greens that dominate Germany, they actually shut down their nuclear energy. So only nuclear energy has the BTUs, British thermal units, to replace fossil fuel without emissions. And modern tech makes it safe. Now, as I say here, I'm happy to be working in water, a space that may be badly underfunded, but at least doesn't oppose rational solutions. Keith says, I like the fact that we already set up to facilitate and quicken the coming back of manufacturing to the Americas and Canada. More on this very shortly. Okay, continuing here. Water on Demand, the Water on Demand commercial pilot, and that I announced that last week. I will be giving you more news about this in this briefing shortly. And of course, this was that clip that I played of Ken and Kevin talking to each other in St. Petersburg. All right, what's going on here? Oh, well, real estate. We thought the residential was safe. Well, first, we knew that commercial was screwed because COVID kind of blew things up. Now residential. And here's our point. All mature assets are subject to an extraordinary amount of distortion due to inflation and other factors, including in real estate, extraordinarily high real estate interest rates, which are highly unproductive and do nothing for our inflation anyway. By contrast, water, like an oil well, is emerging as a powerful investable asset just beginning its run and with a continuously increasing demand curve. This is becoming the investment of choice of 2024. Nobody's going to be reducing the demand for water. That's not controlled the way oil is, for example. All right. Now, this is the reason I picked up on this is there was a post about 2007 was the last good normal year for American society. And of course, after that, we had the big Great Recession, which I think we still are in. And 2007 is when we first incorporated Origin Oil at the time, which eventually became OriginClear. And so we've had our 16-year, now 17-year overnight success. Okay, continuing on here. And drought in Colombia threatens electrical grid. So the problem with Colombia is that about 2/3 of its electricity comes from hydropower. And if they have no water, they have a problem. And that is, again, underlines the vital necessity of predictable water supplies. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this post. Change is inevitable. In 2016, I came across a research paper by Lux Research that said decentralization is a thing. I started to proselytize it. And people were like, what are you talking about? We built a company from scratch in 2018, the one that does the pods, specifically for this. And they didn't become profitable until 2021. And now they're booming. Things kind of hockey sticked starting in 2021, 2022, where a whole lot of businesses, trailer parks, housing developments, power plants, you name it, everybody wants to do their own water treatment. And then you have the problem of huge land booms. There's a big land boom going on north of Dallas, Texas, between Dallas and the Oklahoma border. They're building housing developments like crazy, way ahead of sewage. And so they need those pods. Boom. We've been dropping those pods in. And it's a financial solution for the developer and also a time solution. It takes time to build 5, 10, 15 miles of sewage line, right? Getting into fresh water is a challenge, but it's not as big a challenge as cleaning the dirty water. Boom. There we go. Guess what? Secondhand clothing is on track to take 10% of global fashion sales. And that really says a lot about consumer fundamentals. And basically, for me, the lesson is get out of anything that is affected by consumer demand. Now, since water is 90% industrial and agricultural, then as the tech mania subsides, which it will. Right now, the stock market is being held up strictly by tech. And as that bubble pops, which it has to, it's the nature of bubbles, and don't think that AI will continue to make NVIDIA go vertical forever. I mean, it is what it is. Because there's geopolitical factors, which I'll get into. But let me just say this. If you're looking at what's going to happen after the tech mania subsides and the consumer fundamentals really start kicking in, then you want to be in something that is primarily industrial agricultural and driven by a stable, constantly increasing demand, which is water. Okay, so that's my message there. All right, so continuing here. Again, these are threads that you want to get in real time on Twitter. Oh, all the fabs are down. It'll be days, if not weeks or months, before they all come back online. What's going on? Well, they had a huge earthquake. Fortunately, only 9 people died. Taiwan is extremely accustomed to earthquakes. But all of these chip manufacturing companies, these fabs, are really dependent upon what's going on in Taiwan, which, what does that say? Some of the biggest U.S. companies in AI have asked their Taiwanese manufacturing partners to step up production of AI-related hardware in Mexico, seeking to diminish reliance on China. What have we been saying? What did Ken say in the interview at the beginning of this briefing, which is reshoring is a thing. And here's it's literally happening right now with the biggest multi-billion-dollar trend in manufacturing, which is data centers and chip manufacturing. And they're coming rapidly into Mexico. And that is going to be the next boom. Sure enough, here we are. As we predicted, nearshoring is the new thing. Those of you who read books will remember that the new thing was the book written about Netscape back in the day. But this will drive huge water processing demands in Mexico and U.S. border states. So watch for this, because this is going to create a water crisis. After all, much of Mexico is a desert. Oh, that's interesting. Look at Bitcoin futures. they just keep going down. So I like Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. I think Bitcoin is wonderful. But again, these things are manipulated. And the hedge funds got a whole bunch of people. Well, the big financial players created all these ETFs, got a whole bunch of mainstream investors into it. Oh, Bitcoin is going to go up. I have a small amount of money in Bitcoin, I think like $5,000. I've set a stop so that if it crashes, I'm out because I do not trust this asset. This is the problem with mature assets. That's why water is not being shorted because it's so new. Okay, $6 trillion of commercial real estate debt in the US, of which half is held by banks. And guess what? Here's the more interesting thing. About $1 billion of it is set to be refinanced now. The rates on these loans are set to double or even triple. What's going to happen to the CRE commercial real estate projects? Not only are banks in trouble, but all of these buildings are going to be sold for pennies on the dollar. Ultimately, it will be a buying opportunity, but in the interim, it will be a bloodbath. And I use that word without any fear of anybody misunderstanding me. All right. I had Intelligent Conversations just put out an episode, which we'll do some excerpts from, but let's go ahead and just take a look at a quick clip from this show and see some of the things that they're promoting. Here we go. Let's take, for example, early Manhattan, which when you start a city, you need a sewage system. Mm-hmm. And you know that the local water company, Chase Manhattan, was actually before they became a bank, they were a sewage company.
Really?
Yes. They found that being a bank was much easier and more profitable. But we got to take care of all the poop, right? Primarily, it's a residential issue. And then as America industrialized, it kind of defaulted to the industrial waste going to the same place. And so it became these larger and larger and larger mega systems. 86% of America's waste is handled by only 15% of the water treatment systems. These are giant, like in LA, the Hyperion system down by the ocean. You'll see them, these enormous setups. And the idea at the time was to concentrate expertise and resources and control and make sure that the standards were high. Technology was lacking to downscale these activities for a local brewery. How do you put it in a 500 square foot footprint? So that's what that was about. And I think this interviewer was really cool. You know, I always enjoy good interviewers because they bring out these interesting facts, and you'll see that this interview had great stuff. Okay, we're getting close to the present here. This is this break to build philosophy. Let's take a look at what I had to say about that. I've been thinking a lot about the concept called break to build. You've got to be willing to break your model to build. There's a wonderful book called The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, where he talks about companies that were unable to break, like disk drive industry. I'm selling plenty of 28-inch disk drives. What's my problem? Your problem, dude, is that there's 14-inch disk drives coming along. It's going to destroy your business. And company after company after company was destroyed by this constant cascade of new stuff. And so you've got to be willing to break your model to build anew. But you got to break the build with a team. That's the second thing I really want to emphasize. I had a big epiphany last year where I realized that I'd been a hero all my life. No. Superman doesn't scale. You can be League of Avengers, right? Be a team. And so that's where I realized it's like everything is a team. Without a team, you will not scale your business. So that's the number one thing. If you're going to break the build, fine, but do it with a team. That has proven to be the key to our success since 2018 when we started accumulating an amazing team. Okay. And 5 hours ago, a record 80% of stocks held by Americans are now held by those over 55. The boomers, of course, hold most of it. You can see that red is over 7 years old, and the blue is 55 to 69. The green is 40 to 54, and under 40, they have nothing. All right. Now, this is tough for young Americans, but let me tell you something. We are looking at a very sick stock market, And I am very, very wary of what's happening here because I believe that this is going to take down a lot of boomer equity. Now, this is the fully mature stocks, right? This is where you want to be early on into the next wave, which of course we are. All right. And the last thing here, business, literally 4 hours ago, business and agriculture uses 90% of the water in this country each year, but we preach to everyone to take short showers. And that's just an ironic statement, and we will wrap up that. Ron Williams says U.S. government is one of the largest holders of Bitcoin. Well, you're probably right, Ron, but you know what? We don't know who the largest holders are. This guy Satoshi, who probably is, as you say, U.S. government, has a vast amount. I think is a billionaire in Bitcoin, based on what Satoshi, this unknown Satoshi, set aside for him or himself, themselves, who knows what they are. I am a big fan of Bitcoin, but let me tell you something. What bothers me about it is that there's these giant anonymous dark pools of holders who could do anything to it. They could take it to $200, get everybody to sell, and then buy back in. That stuff happens all the time. That's the Rothschild method, right? Well, it could happen in Bitcoin. So again, set your stops, be wary, because the equity boom will not go on forever. And you want to be looking at something that does not mark to market. Right now, water on demand does not mark to market. OriginClear it doesn't really move to market. I personally think it's undervalued. Time will tell, because we hold the majority of of the current water on demand. That will be diluted by the merger that potentially will happen. But nonetheless, we have a giant holder of, we think is going to be a NASDAQ company. So exciting things there. All right. With that, I'm going to jump back into our presentation and continue. All I can say is exciting times, right? All right. There's a great testimonial by Paul Gaffney, and he's wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's not very long.
Okay, so I am here with a brand new, straight out of the box, OriginClear investor, Paul Gaffney from UK. Paul, listen, thank you. Welcome aboard. Can you just take a moment? As I mentioned to you before I start recording, our investor base is probably the smartest base out there. They get it in ways that they sometimes give me perspectives on why they invested, things that never even occurred to me. You know, you think you know it all, and then somebody teaches you something. So could you just, in your own words, give me a couple of thoughts on, you know, what attracted you to us, why you invested, and what you see for the future?
I, with many discussions, like the idea that you're made up of millions of small investors as opposed to a dozen whales, as we call them here, large investors.
That's what they call them here too, right?
The man in the street, if you will. And also ethical has got to be something in the front of my mind. And as I said to you earlier, a real problem, not a creative problem. It's a real problem. And going forward, I've got probably 25 years, if I'm lucky, to reap the rewards, as it were.
Right. And so you want to start to get the whole, we discussed some of the things you're in are making 2% a year. That's not going to get you there. Right.
No,
so
exactly.
I agree. If you could be behind something that really does change the world, but early enough where the impact on folks like all of us is the stuff you read about. You know, that's the fun part for me. Right.
Yeah.
Creating something that leaves, we're going to leave the place better than we found it. And, by all indications, we're riding a wave where every analyst in the world is saying it's going to make a lot of money too. I'm banking that they're right.
Yeah. Well, I think
Great.
I think the planet is really, someone's got to do something pretty quick.
Right. And listen, and when entrepreneurism meets opportunity, and when it meets the opportunity to potentially solve a crisis, big things can happen. And I think that universally, that's what I get from a lot of our investors.
Yeah, absolutely right.
All right, you're on the same boat. Great.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, listen, thank you for taking the time. Again, welcome aboard. We'll talk real soon.
Pleasure. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
And that was an excellent interview. Thank you very much to Paul and Ken for that. Medium, we published on Medium, and I wanted to just show you this article that we literally just posted. This was the story that I was telling you about last week with the city of Pritchard, Alabama, losing over 60% of the drinking water it buys from Mobile. It's paying for this and is losing over 60% of it. And Jackson, Mississippi, losing 65%. The EPA reports that we lose 2.1 trillion gallons of water annually from water main breaks alone. This is ridiculous. This is insane. Now, why is this important? I'm not going to go on and on with this article, but what's important about this is the fact that we are a big player in water conveyance, as it's called, getting water from point A to point B. A major point of failure for water pipelines is what's called pump stations or lift stations. These are the places where the water goes and gets lifted to a new level. And it's a point of failure because these are basically, they're wells. And they're built out of concrete, fiberglass, steel, and they degrade. And most of them, there's millions of them in America, most of them leak. We have the high density polyethylene or polypropylene shafts that we put in. It's the product called EnviroMod. We can retrofit an existing well or put in a new one. And it's actually a significant part of our business and highly profitable. So that gets us there. I'm going to come back because I do want to get to some more exciting stuff. So let's keep on trucking right here. Mobile home parks. I wanted to update you where we are at. This is turning into the first water on demand vertical. Why do I say this? Because first of all, it's standardized. We have our relationship with EnviroMaintenance means that there's a string of mobile home parks that they maintain, that they are the facilities managers for these, and they do the water work more specifically, and they are upgrading them all from septic tanks to modern septic tanks and lagoons to modern, proper water treatment systems, and they've chosen us. Furthermore, we've gotten approval from Texas Environmental Quality Commission. We've gotten approval for the 5,000 gallon per day standard box that goes into this mobile home parks. So it's pre-permitted. EnviroMaintenance wants to get it in, and then we make it painless by the mobile home park not having to pay upfront. And sure enough, we are in very late stage discussions with our first player, and I'm super excited to talk about it. We've made it super simple. You know, it's just a basic flat fee. These are too small to do pay per gallon. We've been told by a partner, Permionics, our Indian partner, that pay per gallon works only at starting at a certain level. Below that, what the point? You're just charging your amount and you're done. And that's what the mobile home parks are about. So it's a flat fee. You're basically cost of money, the operation and maintenance costs, contingencies, inflation index, profits. And that's it, right? And it's low commitment for the mobile home park. And because you can tow them in and out, it's not a big deal if they do default, which they won't because they have to have it. They have no choice. It's great to be in the sewage business because if you take the sewage treatment plant away, what do? They got nothing. Okay. On April 2nd, we announced that Kevin Harrington, who you know is now on our advisory board, will be helping us he'll be the face of our crowdfunding campaign. And there he is. And basically what we have here is an opportunity to invest in OriginClear. You don't have to be accredited. And we are still in test the waters, as they say. Test the waters means that people aren't making binding commitments, but they show that they're interested. Second thing that I wanted to tell you is April 4th, which is literally today, we announced that we'll be presenting at the 14th annual LD Micro Invitational at the Sofitel, 44th Street in New York, on Monday, April 9th. And so Ken and I will be there, and we are it says here 1 to 1:55, but our presentation starts at 1:30. There we are, and we're hoping to have, if we can get it in time, a clip from Kevin speaking to the audience. We shall see if that works. But in the meantime, what we wanted to say was, again, hopefully Kevin will address the audience in a recorded message, but I always want to say that it doesn't necessarily happen if for some reason the conference is not able to upload it or whatever. Who knows? But anyway, I'm looking forward to it happening. There is a link, which is LDINV 14, in other words, LD Micro Invitational 14.sequireevents.com. And that will be the presentation that will be webcast. And we'll put it up, of course, on our company website. All right. I have a few moments to play the Hrvoje Moric show on TNT Radio Live. I think Hrvoje is one of the leading voices for alternative media. So he's not Joe Rogan yet, but he sure is strong, and I personally think he's wonderful. Let's take a look. I think people are starting to become aware of the thin line separating them between having water and energy and everything else and having none.
This is the Hrvoje Moric Show on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Is there anything when it comes to tech, anything interesting related to water?
Well, yeah, here's the problem with water is that there's a tremendous number of technologies that go unfunded. For example, I know a really fine nanoceramic technology company that we've used their tech, and like one rock will have the surface area of the entire eastern seaboard from Maine to Florida kind of thing, one of those little fractal kind of materials. And they should be highly adopted. But the problem is the water industry does not adopt technology well. And so I think that our mission really should be to help this along and to give these really interesting technologies a way to find a market, because the innovation isn't lacking, but the enthusiasm for it is. But in this brave new world that we're creating, where it's more self-reliance, it's more about perhaps a more, 19th century West kind of new world kind of approach, maybe we can get less of this conservatism happening and more adoption. We do have an amazing innovator, Dan Early, who runs Modular Water Systems, and he has a great audience among engineers. He's created a devoted following. So my belief is, every time, I can't tell you how many people say, "Oh, I heard the city of Miami has a real problem with blah, blah. You could call them up and help them." And I go, "Oh, thank you." Because nothing's going to happen. Nothing. So why would I exert all that effort and my investors' money? No. Instead, we do the end run. And I find that so exciting. And it's really, when I look at, I'm exposed to a lot, including so much of your information, Hrvoje, and I can't believe how much you publish, but you are prolific. And it makes me realize there's so much innovation going on and so much individual initiative happening and so many voices. And this is a great time, despite all the weird stuff happening. So I have high hopes, and water is where it's happening.
Yeah, when I was in Acapulco not long ago, at Jeff Berwick's Acapulco, I had on the show Curtis Stone, the urban farmer who's got a big following, and I think he takes your approach. He says, just get out the way, forget the government, come up with your own solutions at every which level. Whether it's the law, he says, find remedies to get yourself free of the government legally, and he mentioned water. I think he's got like at least two. I can't recall. He may have said he's got like 4 water sources or something, wells, and I don't know what, and rivers and ponds. And so that's absolutely fascinating. Maybe you should get him on your program. And maybe to ask you, what do you think is the importance of having sort of your ear to the ground as a company? Because I find it feels like most companies are out of range. They'll never talk to you. But then I think it's for me, for a little guy, it's like when I see someone like yourself having the weekly show, that really kind of makes you feel more authentic and approachable.
No, you're so right. And, even though I don't have 10,000 people on this show, but nonetheless, I believe that the fact that our investors know that I'm there weekly and they can check anytime, they can do a little play. It gives them a sense that you can't do this week after week after week and be a complete fraud, in my opinion. I mean, you kind of run out of things to say that you start tripping over your own lies and stuff like that. So for me, it betokens sincerity and also respect. I respect the people that I serve, right? Because we'd be nowhere without them. We started in 2007, so we're what 13 years into it, and now we're the overnight success, right? But we kind of had to claw our way in there with the help of regular people, and we're not forgetting that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, and you've heard this before from people who end up being pretty successful. Like there were many, many times it was really, really horrible. But I'll never forget how we were helped out by our investors, and we've done our very best to do right by them. So that people they see that connection. Like a lot of corporations in America, they're not talking to you, they're talking to interest groups, right? That was why there was that whole Bud Light crap, because they were listening to some lobbying group, advocacy group of some kind, and more the power to them, but it wasn't the general public, was it? And so that's where you have to stay in tune with the people who are your real supporters.
Yeah, spot on. What first came to mind, like when you mentioned, if you're not being straight up with the work that you're doing, people will figure stuff out. Sam Bankman-Fried, was it FT? I'm already forgetting. People are already forgetting his name. 15 minutes of fame. He's locked up.
This is the Hrvoje Moric Show on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
It is our final segment here with Riggs Eckelberry, founding CEO of OriginClear, the website OriginClear.com. He does a weekly news update. Yeah, he's on podcasts. You can find all that stuff over at OriginClear.com. And again, it's a way for the average person to invest in water. Someone in the chat, Riggs, asks, I think we may have touched on this in the previous conversation, but how much water does Mexico and Saudi Arabia, for example, take out of the American Southwest?
Wow, that's a number that I don't have it. You're saying net withdrawals? Is that what your question
I think what they refer to, like I have read that Saudi Arabia, is this Saudi Arabia? I don't know if they're using the land or they're taking water from the U.S. or using it for their industry. Well, and then I guess Mexico as well. I know there was a story last week of sewage from Mexico going into California. But any thoughts on foreign countries using American water?
I now understand. I think that the water usage is relatively low compared to the nature of the problem. In other words, you have a huge amount of available water. If you count, for example, brackish water that you could treat in the American Midwest and West. Like, for example, Mexico is actually underserved because by the time the Colorado River gets to Sonora, it's dry. It got used up along the way. There's a whole lake down there that came from basically somebody made a mistake and the water went the wrong way. And it's been there ever since. So I don't think that Mexico is really bad for the U.S. The U.S. with the Colorado River has been bad for Mexico. But let's just come right down to it. It's all about local problems, local action, right? There is plenty of water where most people are, either surface water or artesian or whatever. The problem, of course, is that most groundwater is being drained by overuse. For example, the Ogallala Aquifer, which is responsible for about 30% of our America's produce, so it runs right down the middle of the country, is about 150 feet down from where it's supposed to be. Well, this is very hard to get back. You can't just refill the aquifer. If totally drained, that aquifer would take 600 years to recharge. So it's kind of a seepage process that you have to encourage. Well, why is it down? Well, because nobody's actually tracking the problem, and it's just because we have competing jurisdictions. It's very easy to get overwhelmed, Hrvoje, with the size of the problem in water. You look at India with that literally sewage workers are dying because they're manually digging out the sewage and there's sewage gases, and it's just horrible. You can get kind of eventually apathetic about it. And I think a lot of people have ended up saying, well, what can I do? That's why we say, look, it starts one effluent source at a time. What is the biggest problem we have? The biggest problem we have is what we're doing to the water. We are making it very toxic. So let's take any particular utility. They don't have a problem providing you with fresh water. I mean, you maybe chlorinate it a little bit, clean it up. I mean, they could do better, no question, but it's not the biggest challenge they have. They are overwhelmed by the terrible toxic waste that's being sent their way by business. Well, why are we allowing this? This is insane. What's great is that this is a market solution, right? I'm not asking anybody to mandate anything. Why? Water rates and sewage rates are inflating faster than college tuition and health services in this country. So if people can get off that crazy ride, they'd love to do it. So a lot of businesses are happy to get their own system where they can control their costs. Number two, if they recycle, their water rates lower as well. And number three, which is a big deal, they're out of the clutches of the local utility and they can just do what they want as long as they meet permit requirements. They have water independence. And we do it one site at a time, one after the other, one after the other. We've been doing this for years, and now we're accelerating it. And we're adding this water as a service component. And eventually it turns into a movement. And we won't be the only ones, and that's fine. But we want to show how it's done.
Yeah, and if you want to tell us a bit more about the investment process or opportunities, any number on potential gains or as well as benefit. I think you mentioned if people invest in water infrastructure, what ideally would life look like down the road?
Well, water on demand is a concept where, just like in oil and gas, we are packaging up properties that then investors who have capitalized these properties, because when we put them out in the field and we get paid on the meter, well, these properties are still our asset and they belong to us, and therefore they generate revenues for the investor. So that's number one. Also, part of the same offering for accredited investors is very healthy equity in the penny stock OriginClear, but also free shares in the private company now on track to be acquired by a SPAC. Three-way package is very, very compelling. Why do we make it compelling? Because it's early. We're just starting. And so that's very good. Now, for the unaccredited investor, it's very simple. You get a share in OriginClear and what's called a warrant or an option to buy another share, should you want to, over the next 3 years. And so that's the combination. That's what we've proposed to the SEC. We're waitlisting people for that. And, people just get to have a share. And if they want to have, so it's a penny stock. So it's 250 times, times 100. So that's the amount of shares they get. And they ultimately will be tradable shares in a company that we think will do well. Why? Because it's a major owner of a NASDAQ company and it's creating more companies all along. So we think that it's a great way to participate, to be part of this beginning movement. And as I say, we're going to be replicating this in other financial centers of the world, and we think it's going to become a standard, and that's very exciting.
We've got just a couple minutes left, 3 minutes to midnight. Any other key points that we haven't touched on when it comes to water? I saw you're doing some podcast appearances. One of them discussed cars running on the water. Any other thoughts for us?
Well, that was a question I was asked. Well, a car is going to run on water. I'm like, okay, water as a propellant. It's way outside of my wheelhouse. Look, I think people are starting to become aware of the thin line separating them between having water and energy and everything else and having none. And prepping is no longer a weird thing. It's becoming mainstream. People are starting to be aware of these needs. When they can prepare, great. But more importantly, they need to make sure that they have good, robust infrastructure systems in their area. And it takes action. So I'm not going to speak for energy and these other things. It's not my wheelhouse. But water, we can make it happen. And water on demand, which has we reserve the ticker symbol on the NASDAQ WODI. And you'll have seen it here that Water on Demand Inc. is really the leader of investor funded water as a service for local industry and agriculture, who are the biggest users, and they are the biggest part of the problem, and they can also be the biggest part of the solution.
All right. Great always chatting with you about water. It's an important topic. You're my go-to water person. I don't think I've talked to anyone else on TNT when it comes to water. So thanks again. I'll be right back after this break.
That was really cool. Hrvoje, Moric, if you get a chance, subscribe to Geopolitics and Empire on Twitter or Telegram. Fabulous. He actually no longer hosts that TNT radio thing. It was too hard for him. It was just a crazy thing. And he's now focused entirely on his G&E stream, which is truly amazing. All right. So with that, we're getting very close to the end of the hour. Let me see where we stand with our, well, guess what? Do you know what's happening? Do you know what time it is? It is time for the freewheeling discussion. Let's bring in our gentleman.
Well, the gentleman couldn't be here, but we could make it.
We did. We did indeed make it.
All right. No, as I was saying earlier, you heard the podcast where I was talking about building a team, break to build with a team. And it started in 2018. Ken, you came on board. Dan Early came on board. Tom Marchisello. That was the beginning of really the
Avengers.
Well, yeah, the Avengers, exactly, as opposed to Superman. And, I spent years before that, raising money and trying to make changes happen. But without a team, it was impossible. And of course, AJ joined us after we were a huge success.
That's right.
We are far from it. He is AJ is actually helping us to scale. Without you, AJ, we would not be scaling right now in our marketing, for sure.
Well, thank you for that. No, and I have a plan for you to review too. I don't know if you had a chance to peek in our ClickUp and take a look at the budgetary plan that I threw in there today. But we've got a lot.
Let's put it this way, your eggs. It's everything you wanted.
It is everything you wanted. I promise.
Just to explain to the audience what happened last week.
All right.
I threw out actually early this week, Tuesday. I threw out a challenge like let's really, 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 really start
scaling up.
Voting. We have this amazing figure, Kevin Harrington. We have all these opportunities to build things. We now have a water on demand project we could launch literally tomorrow. So let's biggie it up. And but the problem is you can't biggie it up overnight. You have to build. You have to scale, right? And so AJ, I look forward to reviewing that 90-day plan.
Yeah, it's a 120-day plan. I like to overachieve over here.
It'll be fine.
But no, it's going well. But we have so much stuff going on. It's interesting. You talk about building the team, and it's kind of been my place to just like, let's start gobbling up stuff to do, and let's figure out what is still left to do, and let's start doing more and see where we end up. And I'm constantly running into challenges now where we need more people so that we can scale even more, because we're so aggressively making gains.
Yeah, we're always going to be ahead. We're always going to be ahead of the personnel, dude.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But that's what's amazing, right? In the past 6 months alone, we went from talking, even just from a social perspective, right? That's just one aspect of what we're doing. Last month, our overall impressions and things like that were up like over 3x over the month before. And so we've had record months of growth and engagement month to month to month to month. I think since December at this point. So it's a pretty fantastic thing to not just see, obviously the things that you're doing be successful, but to see the response. And we talked about the Save the Planet, Recycle Water message and really how water recycling and helping people understand the concepts that we're trying to do and the importance of what we're trying to do through that lens just makes it so much more consumable, so much easier for people to get. And it just continues to be echoed in the feedback that we get from those, in the things that we get from you guys in chat, right? And seeing everyone excited to be part of this, and just seeing, guys like Paul who get it, right? And just want to be a part of this. And Kevin, obviously, who goes, yeah, no, I get it. This is important. We got to take advantage of this stuff. You guys will see some ads coming out soon. Again, from specifically Kevin talking about a number of different things, from DWAC to infrastructure and all of these points that are just, look, when we take the time to sit down and really educate people and help them understand what this is, they go, oh my goodness, this is huge. Right. Not just because of impact, but also because of their ability to make their own impact, right? We're creating an entirely new investable asset class, as you talked about, Riggs, right? That's not gonna go up and down with consumables and all this other consumer crap. This is a hard-earned asset class that's going to pay dividends moving forward, and that's huge. It's so good. I'm excited.
It's not these overblown, top-heavy, already highly manipulated assets. I'm going to say one thing. Right. AJ's being a little bit modest. There's actually some metrics that he and I shared today. So kind of sitting next to him in the other room is really good. I said, well, we're going to do this. Then he goes, and he understands my vision. And he's able to implement it, even go beyond what I had hoped. Like, how, like Riggs, I joke how you and I finish each other's sentences all the time. Well, he does that with me, right? We tripled our bookings. This is what this young man has done. We've tripled our bookings. That is no small, mean feat. And what we're about to do on the marketing side, I believe, now ready, drum roll, I think we can 10x the amount of actual people that actually hear our message as it relates directly to the opportunity without me cloning myself. So that's going to be an interesting, but we figured out how to do that. And it comes down to that, that kind of partial introduction, the recorded introduction that we talked about and all that stuff. And look, when you have the greatest story ever told, you can't tell it enough. You just can't tell it enough. You can't be the tree that fell in the woods and there's no one there to hear it. There's another part of the story that I think we have to tell more. I was listening to a radio program this morning, and this is how it was put. So I by the way, I'm also on X if you ever want to visit. I'm not as well behaved as Riggs.
Ken's a fun follow.
I indulge myself a little bit with foolishness.
At Ken Berenger.
Yes.
And
I don't suffer fools as well as he does. But our government is currently printing $1 trillion every 100 days. Remember when printing $1 trillion was going to be bad? Okay. The damage this will do to our children and grandchildren is absolutely incalculable. The only possible way to preserve any hope of the future wealth is assets. Now, we see stories on this platform about Gen Zers. You see them crying in their car on how no matter how hard they work, they can never get ahead. It's becoming absolutely epidemic. OriginClear and Water on Demand has figured out a way to make life's most precious resource into a powerful wealth protection tool for this upcoming generation. Remember how you saw the Gen Z guys have nothing? Okay. Now, eventually boomers, the greatest generation is largely past. You're going to get boomers that begin, and a lot of that wealth will be transferred to younger generations who can't go start buying Bitcoin at $65,000. Right. They need look, in a previous life, I knew people who built wealth buying up real estate in Little Italy in 1908. Wow. Right? I mean, that's when and the stuff is worth millions and millions and millions of dollars because it's Little Italy, right? Those opportunities really, you're not going to have millions of people entering a place rapidly like they did. So we have to find new ways. And why not do it in a way that can have one of the largest, and a continuation of this, I was on a roll with this thing, right? I said, adding to this thought, every $1 trillion that the U.S. Treasury prints reduces our GDP by 0.28%. That means this year alone, we will permanently reduce our GDP by a full 1 point. How long can we keep that up? Not long. The beginning stage
An unmanipulated asset of water can rescue us from both a health and wealth standpoint. Mm-hmm. And I was sure to tag OriginClear and Water on Demand. I keep forgetting to tag Riggs, but he's got so much stuff going on with.
Don't tag me because I'm too important, and if I'm tagged, then I might get too.
You have to respond, right? Well, you know what?
Listen,
I'm doing it right now.
Thank you. As we're wrapping up, Jay Miller says status of where your systems are being implemented. Well, just to give you that, Jay. You're going to be hearing a lot about what's happening in Texas. Remember that modular water systems grew 7x between 2019 and 2023. That is literally hundreds of systems. One of the big problems we have is telling people about our systems. The case studies, AJ has been working super hard to get case studies published because the team is over at Modular Water is just constantly building stuff and throwing it out there and doing the next one, and they're not able to document it. We are getting that done. Number two, the big Texas Water on Demand mobile home park project is going to be super exciting, so stay tuned. Lots more to talk about. We are out of time. I'm going to just put this up here, and I just want to say that next week we'll be reporting on our adventure in New York, and which is the 8th. That press release was wrong. It said the 9th, but it is the 8th. And remember to fill out your Zoom survey. Very, very important. AJ reads.
Yes, please.
And with that, Paul Calro says, I believe that WODI is going to become like the public storage and extra space storage of yesterday. The original investors are making a huge amount of cash flow. Wow. I like that example.
Your mouth to God's ears, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us. It's our audience grows each week, and we appreciate it greatly. Your loyalty. And when Ken says that bookings go up 10x, what does that mean? It means that we're no longer leaning on the shoulders of the original investors. We're able to broaden the investing base to make sure that we do get on the NASDAQ because it has to be funded, and also fund our water projects. So that will directly assist us. Thank you all. Thank you, Ken and AJ, for joining. And let's see you next week. We will have much more. And our presentation will be during the eclipse. Heck, why not, Paul, right? Paul Fetcher says,
nothing weird happens during an eclipse. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So it's all good.
Yeah.
All good. We'll go running around in circles screaming on Times Square. Anyway.
There you go.
Yeah, because Sofitel is right there at Times Square. Paul, I look forward to seeing you if possible. Meanwhile, take care, everyone. Talk next week.
Ciao.
See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.